And worry comes from about four things, I believe. One, it comes from what you know or do not know. Two, what you have or do not have. Three, what's available to you or what's not available to you. Four, from what you cannot control. Worry comes from what you cannot control. First of all, worry comes from what you have or do not have. Worry comes from what you have or do not have. Mostly what you do not have. Worry comes from what you do not have. For instance, you're about to get a very high paying job with very many benefits. And when you're just about to conclude your various necessary registrations, you're told that you need, for instance, an international passport. And if unfortunately you do not have an international passport, it means you most likely would not get that job. Worry will happen. Secondly, worry comes from what you know or do not know. Let's take an example. For instance, you're in a particular location. You're inside and the report comes that there has been a fire outbreak. Your car is parked outside, there has been a fire outbreak, and 90 out of 100 cars were destroyed by fire. 90 out of 100 cars were destroyed by fire. Instantly, you begin to worry until you're told that your car is part of the 10 that was not destroyed. So worry comes sometimes from what we do not know. Thirdly, worry comes from what's available or not available. For instance, you're trying to submit a report, and just a very important report that has a timeline, and you're close to the deadline. And just when you're about to submit the report, you discover that there's no data connection. In other words, data connection is unavailable. Most likely you begin to worry. So worry comes from what is unavailable. And fourthly and finally, worry comes from what we cannot control. What we cannot control. If you're about to take a flight and you're told that there's turbulence in the weather and your flight has been postponed, and if it's a very important flight that has a deadline or a time frame, you begin to worry due to what you cannot control. Now, how can worry be solved? Let's take an example or an illustration. If I tell you, for instance, because in today's world, there are still countries that have kings as their ruler. And I mean kings with absolute authority. Yes, there are some places that have kings as rulers, and those kings have absolute authority. Their words can become law at any point in time. The words can become instituted as laws, irrespective of how those words come. And if I tell you that you're in such a location and the king of that town gives you his word, either the king or the queen gives you their word that I am with you, you have my support. You have my support in whatever you do. You know that word, I can tell you for a fact, that word is one, assurance. In other words, it provides. Two, that word is insurance. In other words, whatsoever happens that goes wrong, that king will fix it for you. Having such a word reduces your level of worry. It reduces your level of also potential worry. But here's the thing, with such a king or a queen who is human, there are limitations. They are limited by time. They can't be everywhere at the same time. They can't go back into the past to change things. They can't go into the future to make things happen. They're limited by time. They are also limited by ability, because beyond their boundary, beyond their constituency, beyond their domain, they do not have the same power. Thirdly, they are also limited by knowledge, because they do not know everything. They do not know what's about to happen. and they cannot shield you from what they do not know. So they're limited by time, space, domain, territory, and also by knowledge. Now, what if I tell you that as a believer, you have such a word from a king, and this time around, that king is not human. That king is a spirit. Not just some phantom, but a definite person. Hebrews 13 verse 5. He himself said, I will not leave you nor forsake you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Part of why this word is not concrete to us. One, many of us do not know yet that such a word exists. We may have heard it, but we did not keep it to mind. Either we did not keep it to mind, or the devil stole that knowledge, that precious information from us. God Almighty, in his infiniteness, gave us a word and said, I will not leave you nor forsake you. The first mention of that word was in Deuteronomy 31 verse 8. It was repeated again to tell you that that word was not meant for people in the Old Testament alone, but for people also in the New Testament, and for people who are yet to come